How does someone go from recording YouTube videos during the day to dissolving the bodies of 3 innocent students in acid at night? Allow me to relate this tragic story of Christian Palma Gutierrez and the cartel he was involved with. On December 2nd, 2001 around 7:30 in the afternoon, 2 grenades were thrown at the United States consulate in Guadalajara, knocking down the walls of the building. Fortunately, at that time, there was no one in the building, as the offices were closed. This act of violence was interpreted as a warning sent to the United States government and the DEA by one of the most ruthless Mexican cartels at the time, the Jalisco Nueva Generación Cartel, also known as El Cuatro Letras, which secretly, it was the cartel for which Christian Palma Gutierrez worked. The atrocious acts he carried out, according to him, were orders from the cartel to commit malicious actions against innocent students. To understand why he carried out such acts, we must go back in time and return to the moment when his wave of violence against innocent Mexicans began. El Cuatro Letras was a subgroup of the Milenio Cartel, which in turn was a faction of the Sinaloa Cartel led by El Chapo. Following the arrest of the leaders of the Milenio Cartel, there was no one to assume leadership, which led to the fragmentation of the cartel into a smaller group, the Jalisco Nueva Generación Cartel. A key figure in the leadership of this new group was Nemesio Oseguera, known as El Mencho. Like El Chapo, El Mencho had an iron will to dominate the cocaine market. However, to achieve this, they used violence. In June 2009, an abandoned truck was found in a residential neighborhood in Cancun, Quintana Roo, Mexico. Inside, the bodies of 3 men were found, along with a message in English that said, "We are the new Matatas group. We are against kidnapping and extortion, and we will fight in all states for a cleaner Mexico." This tragic incident marked the first mass murder perpetrated by the cartel, and it is ironic how they claim to oppose the kidnapping, when 9 years later they kidnapped and murdered the 3 students mentioned above. However, what is more important at this point is that the cartel needed to use violence to achieve its objectives. El Chapo and his men were involved in a dark chess game against his allies, and there were rumors of disloyalty on the part of El Chapo toward his allies. He was said to have reached an agreement with the Mexican government to turn himself in exchange for immunity for both himself and members of his cartel. This act deeply angered the cartel boss, who summoned affiliated drug traffickers and a highly armed unit of hitmen to carry out the most violent and brutal act that any cartel had ever perpetrated before. This is where Christian Palma Gutierrez comes in, and we're about to find out. On September 20th, 2000, around midnight, approximately 3 vehicles blocked a major road in Boca del Rio, Mexico. This evidently paralyzed traffic, and once it occurred, a group of armed men descended from these vehicles and opened the doors of 2 trucks. Then they proceeded to extract the bodies of several men. As they did so, another set of armed individuals pointed their weapons at the stunned drivers on the highway. Once they finished deploying the bodies, they got back into their vehicles and left. When Mexican authorities arrived at the scene, they found an abandoned letter. It read, "No more extortions, no more murders of innocent people. This is for tiles in the state of Veracruz and for the politicians who support them. This will happen to them. We can shoot them like we did before. People of Veracruz, do not allow them to extort you or pay for protection. If they do it, it is because they want to. That is the only option these people have. This will happen to all the damn mushrooms that continue to operate in Veracruz. This territory has a new owner." Clearly, this letter was addressed to Los Zetas, and it was initially assumed that the 35 armed men were members of Los Zetas. However, upon further investigation, it was determined that only 6 of them were actual Los Zetas members. They killed 29 people solely based on the suspicion that they were members of the cartel. If this doesn't terrify you, I don't know what will. The incredible thing is that the story gets worse from here. On October 6, 2000, 36 bodies were found in 3 different houses in the Veracruz neighborhood. Of them, 20 were found in the same building, while the rest were distributed in 2 other homes. By the end of 2000 ONS, the Cuatro Letras had murdered more than 300 Mexicans in the state of Veracruz, and only a small portion of this number were cartel members. They do not care to differentiate who is or is not a member of a cartel. If you are in their territory, they will kill without hesitation, and that is probably why those students made the worst mistake of their lives by entering their territory. But let's back up a little. If the Cuatro Letras really killed so many people, what exactly happened to their bodies? Well, apart from the ones they used to transmit their messages, they decomposed the rest into acid. The individual who helped in the preparation of this macabre task was Christian Palma Gutierrez. So who exactly is he? Christian Palma Gutierrez, known by his stage name Uva, was well known for his YouTube and Facebook channels. He had more than 60,000 subscribers on YouTube and millions of views on his videos. Their 2 Facebook pages accumulated more than 40,000 followers in total. However, behind the scenes, Christian, or rather, UVA, was in charge of cooking for the Jalisco Nueva Generacion cartel. When the cartel's hitmen eliminated someone and wanted the body to disappear, they handed the body over to Uva. He would dismember it into smaller parts and then dissolve those parts in sulfuric acid. This process required approximately 2 to 3 hours, since they even had to liquefy the bones. The stench emanating from this mixture, according to some people, smelled like pure death. Once the body was completely dissolved, it was discarded in a distant sewer where no one would venture to look. The 3 students, identified as Javier Salomon Aceves Gastelum, Jesus Daniel Diaz, and Marco Avalos, were filming on a ranch in Tonalá, in the western state of Jalisco. This ranch was under surveillance by members of the Cuatro Letras as they waited to ambush alleged rivals from a rival group who were supposedly meeting at that specific location. These students, who were only doing a school project, were approached by members of the 4 Letters. After asking some questions, they were mistaken for rival members of the Nueva Plaza cartel and kidnapped. Afterwards, they were taken to a hideout on the outskirts of the city, where they tied them up and began interrogating them. One of the students was the one who suffered the most intense interrogation, and when he did not provide the answers they expected, the members of the Cuatro Letras gang subjected him to brutal beatings with kicks, punches, and various violent objects. This torment continued for hours and culminated in his murder. The intention was not necessarily to kill him. However, due to the extensive number of blows to the head and internal injuries he suffered, there was no way for him to survive. The other 2 students were witnesses to the crime, and the members of the 4 Letters could not afford to leave them alive. Therefore, they were also killed in that hideout. In the afternoon of that day, they called Uva to come collect the bodies and prepare them for their macabre process. However, after the proceedings were concluded, Mexican authorities traced the crime to him, and he was arrested a few days later. Cuba was arrested and charged with aggravated kidnapping. Later, human fragments identical to those of the 3 students were found in the place where Uva had discarded the remains. He could not deny his involvement in the incident, and admitted to the authorities that he had been the man in charge of cooking human corpse parts in acid for the cartel over a period of time. He alleged that he was paid 3,000 pesos a week to perform this task, which is equivalent to approximately $15. Was that payment really worth it for his work? Before answering that question, it is important to understand that Cuba was not an innocent person either. Their music videos always portrayed a raw image of life on the streets of Mexico, involving elements such as drugs, weapons, poverty, and extreme violence. While some might call it art, it really wasn't. Let me explain it in more detail. Cuba attempted to convey a message through its music videos, which were often filmed in professional-looking locations, such as a forest or even a cemetery. In one of his videos, he rapped about his own death and expressed the following words: "If I'm not here tomorrow, I want to tell you how sorry I am for everything I did, everything I said. Mom, Dad, forgive me. I couldn't escape the darkness." In other videos, he was seen with his friends driving a flashy car or showing off his elegant chains. It is undeniable that he had real talent, as he demonstrated at a music festival at the Tijuana border post on April 29, 2018. However, regardless of his talent, there was no excuse for engaging in the horrendous practice of cooking human body parts for the 4 letters. The people of Mexico had reached their limit with the horrors of the war between the cartels. More than 2,000 people took to the streets with banners that shouted, "Not one more," and demanded peace. These banners reflected the feelings of the population. The issue was not just the tragic death of 3 students or the potential waste of Christian Palma Gutierrez's talents behind bars. The real problem is that the Mexican cartels hold disproportionate power in the country, which means that no one is safe. In the same year that the tragedy of these students occurred, Mexico recorded more than 24,000 homicides, with the territory of the Cuatro Letras contributing more than 1,000 deaths alone. The magnitude of the people who lost their lives due to the drug war in Mexico is staggering. Even the fact that the Sinaloa cartel continues to operate strongly despite the imprisonment of its leader, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who is serving multiple life sentences in the most secure prison in the United States, shows that these cartels are difficult to stop. As for the rumors about the possible death of Mencho, they do not change the situation substantially, since another leader could emerge and lead the criminal organization, thus perpetuating the reign of terror and violence in Mexico. The question that arises is whether this endless violence will ever come to an end. A friend of Gutierrez expressed a profound reflection. "Son, what would have been your destiny if luck had placed you somewhere else? I'm sure that your talent would have taken you very far." His videos, like the narratives of those who study film, tell a story. Perhaps under different circumstances, he could have led a happy life. However, what underlies it is the sadness of a truncated future and the feeling of being trapped in a hell where the only option seems to be to kill or be killed. That's all for today. I hope you liked the video. If so, we invite you to give it a like. Don't forget to activate the bell to find out about any new video we upload. And subscribe if you are a true fan of Narcos stories. See you next time.